Okay, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome again to this year's version of Waste Expo for our CEO interview. It's one of my particularly favorite things to do during Waste Expo is to talk to some of the prominent leaders in our industry and to get to know them a little bit better. And I know everybody looks forward to these interviews. And today we have Patrick Dovigi with us. Good morning, Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Patrick, if you don't mind, I'm going to read your bio for everybody real quickly, and then we'll get started with some questions and talk to you a little bit about your background, et cetera.
All right.
Okay, Patrick is the founder, president, and CEO and chairman of the board of directors of GFL. In 2007, Patrick had a vision to create a company that is a one-stop shop provider of environmental solutions. Since then, drawing on the discipline he learned in his early hockey career as a goalie, no less, I believe, Patrick has driven GFL to become the fourth largest environmental services company in North America. Patrick has instilled an entrepreneurial culture at GFL's leadership team and a focus on operational excellence, sustainability, and safety. In 2017, he was recognized by Waste 360 with the Top 40 Under 40 award. Patrick is also driven by a passion to give back to charities in the host communities in which they do business. In addition to being a regular supporter of those charities and local health and family initiatives, he contributed $5 million to help create the Dovigi Family Sports Medicine Clinic. You guys could have helped me with my Achilles tendon this winter, so I'm just now getting back up and around. A first of its kind sports medicine research and care facility providing support to individuals with sports related injuries. Patrick currently serves on the board of directors of EREF and the Toronto General and Western Hospital Foundation. So thanks again, Patrick, for joining us today. And I know a lot of people are curious about you and curious about GFL. So we appreciate you opening up today and giving us a few minutes to talk about your background. I normally start these interviews with allowing you to speak a little bit about your family and your personal pastimes. And given your sports background, I'm kind of curious to know what you still do to stay fit and what you're passionate about relative to sports.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I guess hockey was always sort of a pinnacle of my life. I grew up in a small city in Canada, in Northern Ontario, with 80,000 people. Best known where Wayne Gretzky played junior hockey, and the Esposito brothers grew up, which are sort of distant relatives. So being born to an immigrant mother and a father who was always in business and taught business at a high school in the city, and my mother was a grade 1 and a grade 2 teacher, sort of just with that premise, grew up in a very sort of tight-knit community in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where hockey was sort of the foundation of who I am today. It was a big part of my life. It was a big part of everyone's life up there, to be honest. And, grew up in Sault Ste. Marie, and hockey afforded me the ability to actually be able to leave Sault Ste. Marie at a fairly young age. As I excelled in that sport, and sort of as I excelled, had to move on to greener pastures, and left home when I was 14 to go and play hockey in Southern Ontario, where which was the metropolis of the hockey back then, and sort of that sort of formed the basis for me to actually build roots in Southern Ontario, and sort of here I am today.
Oh, very good. That's very interesting. And how did you manage to go from hockey once you retired from that career to the waste industry? Did you know people? Did you just say, hey, this looks like a good industry? How'd that happen?
It's interesting. I worked at a little fund that managed money that made investments in environmental services businesses, and one of the investments that we had made actually went horribly wrong, and I got stuck as the low man on the totem pole to try and go in and actually, identify the problems, turn it around, and get that business sold. And coincidentally enough, there was another successful startup in Canada that was doing, virtually the same thing, which was BFI Canada at the time, and really just saw what they were doing. And then they had recently expanded in 2005 into the US and saw an opportunity for another startup in Canada to basically start up in Canada and do it, but more of an environmental services model, more around ESG related initiatives, because first and foremost, in the early days, we couldn't afford a landfill. So a landfill wasn't an option. So we needed another way to compete, hence the name Green for Life, and more of a focus around diversion, recycling, and some of the new stewardship programs that we saw coming to the forefront, that were going to lead Canada similar to Europe, which weren't as prevalent in the US 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about the name of your company, Green for Life. Did you name the company?
I did.
Yeah, well, you must have a strong environmental, ethic or philosophy or something like that. There must be a story behind that. So.
There was. It was just, again, I think it was, the industry had used the name waste in their name for a lot of time, and truthfully, if you looked around Europe and various parts of Asia, the waste was becoming not a great word. So it was, what could we do to differentiate ourselves from the competition? What could we show them that, yes, we can landfill, yes, we have access to landfills, but what could we do differently? How could we market ourselves and brand ourselves differently? And what could we do internally to be able to, divert different streams from landfill and be perceived as being, greener than the next guy? And that would give us the competitive advantage versus just selling on price, et cetera.
Oh, great. Hey, one thing we like to talk about is just, kind of your leadership philosophy, how you motivate people, that kind of thing. And we also like to learn, especially about people that have motivated you in your life. And obviously, being a professional hockey player, you've met some very interesting characters and very interesting leaders that have shaped you and formed you. I wonder if you could talk about some of the people in your life that have helped you develop your leadership philosophies, on and off of the ice, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I go, I think what attracts people to be at GFL is a lot of those philosophies that, truthfully, I learned from hockey, and I say it all the time. I mean, if I look at the best coaches I had over the years and the best teams, it wasn't always the team that had the A+ talent that went the furthest and the deepest. It was, being led by a coach that allowed us to play the game and didn't run a dictatorship. And I think when that spills over to GFL, it's again picking the right talent, but also allowing people to be involved and make decisions, and just not being told what to do and what playbook they have to execute in order to get it done. Listen, I'm a firm believer that I don't know anywhere near as amount of the markets as the people that we have running our markets. We have to rely on them as the entrepreneur in that market to be able to tell us what's happening in the market, and then we get to be able to make decisions. And we make those decisions collaboratively, and we allow people and empower them to make decisions and run their business. And I think when you get that, people feel more involved, they feel more engaged, they feel more attached to the company, and they want to see the company succeed. When I started in this business a while ago, on the weekends, I used to work on the scale at the transfer stations, right? And I always, it always resonated in my head when certain drivers from certain companies would come in, and all they would do was complain about the companies that they worked for and all the things that the companies did wrong, et cetera. And then you listen to the other drivers that came from the other companies and would just talk about how happy they were and how loyal they were and what made them stay at that specific company for so long. And it wasn't money. It wasn't this. It was literally just the simple value of respect and being treated like an equal, by management or the family that owned the business. And that created that sort of loyalty. And that's what we've tried to create at GFL. Now, we've done it on a sort of lot larger of a scale, and that's why each one of the management that we have in the specific regions in the 9 provinces in Canada and 23 states in the US are, extremely important to us, and, adopt the same culture that we have, because that's what we want to empower them to do. And we want to create that loyalty, and we want to create GFL as the place that people want to work.
Well, very good. I can certainly relate to empowering people and not, micromanaging people and just hiring good talent and turning them loose. I manage a lot of very type A lobbyists here in Washington, D.C., and they do their best work when you give them some independence and allow them to drive their own path. So I appreciate that. So it's September 9th, I believe, when we're recording this interview, and COVID still remains with us. I know the COVID experience up in Canada has been just a little bit different than the U.S. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about COVID, how it's affected your business, what your thoughts are on the future, and maybe talk a little bit about how things have been a little bit different in Canada than they have been in the U.S.
Sure. I mean, like everyone, no one knew what to expect. I think, the solid waste sector for sure has proved to be more resilient than maybe people would have originally thought. Volumes continue, to be down, but I think that could be expected. But by and large, when you look at across the industry and specifically our company, I think we've weathered the storm extremely well. I look at case counts on a daily basis, again, having 14,000 plus employees, and just ensuring that we're doing all the right things to ensure that we're not having, COVID outbreaks, particularly in hauling yards and recycling facilities, transfer stations, landfills, and some of our wastewater processing facilities, as well as soil remediation facilities. And we're still under 100 cases throughout the entire company, really since the beginning. So I think the measures that we've put in place, have yielded a good result. I mean, it's been a big change for people not being able to get a lot of FaceTime. I mean, Zoom calls are great, but it's, I'm still a firm believer that it doesn't replace being in the same room and reading body language and shaking hands, et cetera. So, I mean, that's been a change, and we've had to really change how we do business. But I think, like anything, that will go away. I mean, I read a great article from the guys at Brookfield the other day. It's like, when the fax machine came out and the telephones came out and people, thought that was going to be the end of travel and meetings, et cetera. And I'm hopeful we get a vaccine and we get through COVID. I mean, I think in Canada, I think Canadians, by and large, generally have a perspective on doing what the government tells them to do. And I think in the U.S., I mean, there's a clear divide between sort of blue and red states in the U.S. And there's,
I don't know what you're talking about. So
everybody's, handled a little bit differently. Maybe the way the U.S. handled it in the end will be right. Yes, they have a lot more cases, but the deaths are, going down drastically. And I think, hopefully with that, and then with a vaccine that seems to be coming sooner rather than later, at least everybody hopes that we're going to turn this corner sometime in 2021. But, I think we're still running the business the same way with some changes. We're still getting acquisitions done, limiting travel to essential travel only. And I think, when it turns, it's going to be a good thing for everyone. But for now, we're keeping everyone safe, and most importantly, getting waste picked up off the streets and continuing on as business as usual.
Yeah, well, I certainly have Zoom call burnout myself, and I think people should wait till this is over and take a breath before they go planning, the rest of their business lives, in the current situation. I certainly agree with that. And I'm glad to hear that, your company is weathering the storm. It seems as though the entire industry has done a great job of weathering the storm. We haven't had any large waste disasters throughout the country, which, things could certainly have been very different, and hopefully they'll stay this way. But there's been lots of opportunities to be proud of the industry, and I'm sure you're very proud of, all that your company has done as well. I do want to get your thoughts and perspectives. COVID will pass, and we'll get beyond this, and we'll have to get back to the daily grind of the issues that face the industry. And one of those issues is certainly safety in the industry. Texting and driving. I don't know how it is in Canada, but it's pretty bad in the U.S. We have a lot of issues relative to things going on the highways and the roads and affecting our workers. Can you talk just a little bit about safety, and if there's a difference between Canada and the U.S., let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, varies by state in the U.S., but I think Canada has taken a very hard line with texting and driving. I mean, today it's an automatic suspension of 3 days that you lose your license if you get caught texting and driving. So, I think we've all done it. I think we can't do it. There has to be zero tolerance around it just because of how dangerous it is. I mean, things happen sort of in a blink of an eye. But I think, legislators on both sides of the border are taking this very seriously. And I think, us as companies have zero tolerance policies for it. And I think as, people just get retrained, their mind to think, no different than was wearing a seatbelt, et cetera. I think that is going to continue to be visible. And as legislation changes in all the states and provinces in Canada, again, I think it's just going to be at people's top of mind. But it's just reinforcing that in the brains of, not only our drivers, everyone, that just texting and driving is not acceptable. And it's I think today it causes more deaths than actually drinking and driving. So it's something that has to be at the top of mind of everyone, and just constantly reinforcing that, in the brains and heads of everyone, not only our drivers.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting law you just referenced. I can feel some of my lobbying staff, looking that up right now, and maybe that's something we need to try to start pushing in the U.S. Hey, can we shift a little bit and talk just a little bit about GFL and kind of what your future plans are relative to Canada versus U.S., et cetera? I know that you've gone through an IPO, and congratulations, by the way, right in the smack middle of the pandemic. So that must have been quite a challenge, and maybe you can tell us how that went, and talk a little bit about your future plans for the company.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, we've been through multiple private equity firms over the last 14 years, and I think it was inevitable that we would become a public company at some point. The shareholders had very specific views on value at the time of the IPO, and that's why we didn't proceed in late 2019, and had a significant amount of inbound interest from investors. That's why we went back to the market in early 2020, obviously not knowing that the COVID backdrop would be on our backs. That being said, we got the transaction done, I think probably a couple of days before the COVID outbreak actually happened. And, it wasn't exactly how we anticipated spending our first few months of being a public company, updating investors about what they just invested in and the business, but sort of got through that. And I think, a big part of the thesis of going public is we saw, two larger opportunities that we wanted, that worked well and fit well with our business and our geography, which were the waste management ADS divestitures, and assuming we were able to successfully get those, acquire the assets from Macquarie, from WCA. So even through COVID, I think both of those, proved out, and we were able to successfully get both of those transactions signed up, and now just waiting for DOJ approval on both of those. And then I think, listen, we're going to turn ourselves to, integrating these assets and going back to doing what we've always done well, which is sort of, extrapolate as much value as we can out of the assets, and then go back to our sort of normal tuck-in program. When you look at the business today, operating in 9 provinces in Canada, and, post these 2 transactions, we'll be operating in 27 states in the U.S. That's a great, ground to grow from in great markets. And I think you'll continue to see us play in those markets, both in Canada and the U.S. I mean, we had a plan, pre-IPO, the business was generating about $1 billion of EBITDA. I mean, my plan was over 5 to 7 years would be to double the size of the business. And I think, getting these 2 acquisitions done really set us on path to do that. And I think, comfortably we can do that over the next sort of 5 to 7 years. And that was our goal, sort of going into this.
Oh, great. Hey, and congratulations on all of that and all of your recent successes. And you found out yesterday that you have another success coming. The National Waste and Recycling Association gave a facility, Canada Fibers, one of your facility, a recycling Facility of the Year award. So, we're going to be releasing a press release very shortly on that. So, congratulations on that award. There was a lot of stiff competition this year. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful facility. I mean, listen, again, going back to the guys at Canada Fibers do a great job, and I've been around the industry a long time, and take my hat off to those guys and all the staff that really built that facility, because they did it with limited time, and the city of Winnipeg didn't have a great experience with the last service provider, and we're really looking for change, and our guys brought their sort of best management practices and their expertise to the table, and we're able to get that. So it's very nice, and thankful to you and the rest of the team there to actually recognize them, because that always goes a long way.
No worries, and that's a member selected award, so staff has no hands in that, but so that's even better. So, hey, just a couple more questions, and we'll let you go. I know you're an extremely busy person. There's been a lot of uprising, especially in the U.S., about race relations and that kind of thing. And we in the industry are constantly trying to work on issues such as that. I know we have, quite an initiative to bring more women into the waste industry, which is desperately needed. I think we're something like 95% male, and we need to get, the other side of that into the workforce. With race relations flaring up and that kind of thing, companies have, a responsibility to help out as best they can in that regard. And I'm sure you guys have given that some thought. So can you talk a little bit about, just integrating, more voices into the waste industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a big focus of ours. Women have always been, a big part of, what we try and do. We've developed the Women in Waste program here at GFL, so promoting, women, et cetera, in this. So I think we've done that, from before. Now with the latest movements, again, we're retooling exactly how we hire and giving opportunities to everyone, sort of not just based on race, but again, just creating opportunities and really creating, training programs from breeding within. And I'm a big believer that you breed from within. And you groom from within, because keeping loyalty and keeping people within the company are always your best dollar spent, and creating those opportunities for everyone. Our drivers sometimes become our best managers, and managers become our best executives. And I think if you can create that dynamic, you're going to have a successful result. So I mean, we are, it's top of mind for us, and will continue to be top of mind, and we will keep developing these programs sort of moving forward.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. And, my last question for you is, related to NWRA itself. And, we're the advocates for the industry, and we try to make sure that we are well representing what's going on in the industry. We've had a very, very busy time during COVID, probably the most busy time I have ever seen in the advocacy world in my 20 years in DC, due to just the number of issues we had to tackle relative to the crisis. But one, thank you so much for your continued membership and support of NWRA. And what can we do to serve you better? What sorts of public policy issues do you see on the horizon that we should be paying attention to as your trade association?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it, I mean, it's really trying to get consistency across, the various regions. I think there's a lot of inconsistencies between different geographies in the U.S. And I think if we can just sort of move, to sort of more one sort of common platform and one set of sort of rules and regulations, I think it's going to yield a great result and help everybody and allow us to make the investments that we need to make, in different geographies based on that sort of regulation change. And I mean, we've seen that evolve in Canada over the last 10 years, whether it was around food waste, whether it was around recycling, whether it was around extended producer responsibility, whether it was around landfill gas to energy, whether it was around diversion of contaminated soils, et cetera, just actually allowing us to, have an idea of where things are going and being able to allow us to make the investments that we need to make in the business to keep up with where things are moving. And I think as that continues to evolve, I think it's just going to make it easier and easier for all of us to, really make those capital expenditures where we need to.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. We've started looking at a possibility of doing some having some joint conversations with the municipalities and the like, trying to work on the consistency issue. I agree with you. I think it's one of the biggest problems. It has evolved naturally, and there are reasons for the inconsistency between states. But I think there's work that can be done there, and we're going to try to start putting some energy towards that and see what we can do. It's a big challenge, especially between the states. So, it's something that I hear mentioned. Just talking to regular people all the time. It's one of the things that just comes up in regular conversations all the time. So I think we're going to put some energy towards that, and look for some help from the industry and see what we can accomplish. But hey, Patrick, thanks so much for your time today. Do you have anything else you want to say to everybody here at this year's version of Waste Expo?
Great. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too, boy.
Bye.